Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we are continuing with the chapter entitled The Killing of Keshi and Vyoma, and we will be covering text 12, text 13 and text 14. So text 12 is on the board, which you can chant responsively. Atman Atmashraya Purvam Maya Shasriche Gunan Taridam Satya Sankalpaha Sujasi Atsi Avaishishvaraha Atmanatmashraya Purvam Maya Shashruje Gunan Taridam Satya Sankalpaham Sujasi Atsi Avashishvaraha Atmanatmashraya Purvam Maya Sashruje Gunan Taridam Satya Sankalpaham Sujasi Atsi Avashishvaraha. Please chant. Atmanat Amashraya Purvam Maya Sasruje Gunan Tairidam Satye Sankalpaha Sujasi Atsi Avashishvara Atmanatmashraya Purvam Maya Sasruje Gunan Tairidam Satya Sankalpa Sujasi Atsi Abhashishvara Atmanatmashraya Purvam Maya Sasruje Gunan Tairidam Satya Sankalpa Sujasi Atsi Avashishvara. Okay. So the word for word, Atmana, by your personal potency. Atma, of the spirit soul. Ashraya, the shelter. Purvam, first. Mayaya, by your creative energy. Sasrije, you produced. Gunan, the basic modes of material nature. Tai, through these. Idam, is it? this universe. Satya, always realized in fact. Sankalpa, whose desires. Srijase, you create. Atsi, withdraw. Avasi, and maintain. Ishvara, the controller. Translation by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. You are the shelter of all souls, and being the supreme controller, you fulfill your desires simply by your will. By your personal creative potency, you manifested in the beginning the primal modes of material nature, and through their agency, you create, maintain, and then destroy this universe. Text 13. Sattvam Buddhara Bhutanam Daitya Pramata Rakshasham Avatirno Vinashaya Sadhunam Rakshanaya Cha. And the translation for text 13. You, that very same creature, have now descended on the earth to annihilate the Daitya, Pramata, and Rakshasa demons who are posing as kings, and also to protect the godly. And text 14. Disya te nihato daityo lilayam haya kriti yasyam keshita santrastas tajanti anumisha divam. And the translation for text 14. The horse demon was so terrifying that his neighing frightened the demigods into leaving their heavenly kingdom. But by our good fortune, you have enjoyed the thought of killing him. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitam Sha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavan Ishwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Padaswami Tinamine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation once more for text 12. You're the shelter of all souls, and being the supreme controller, you fulfill your desires simply by your will. By your personal creative potency, you manifested in the beginning the primal modes of material nature, and through their agency, you create, maintain, and then destroy this universe. So neither of these three texts have a purport, a BBT purport, but there is a purport from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that I had access to. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse has Narada speaking his intention. So I'm going to read what his commentary is. If you had not created myself, this is Narada talking, if you had not created myself, my intelligence, and the rest of the universe, then I would not be able to make any request from you. And and the continuation of the commentary. This is still Narada talking. You are independent and the shelter of all souls. That was that term Atma Ashraya. By your energies, which are none different from you, Atmana, you create the elements, starting from Mahatattva. As you create this world, you also inspire everyone to fulfill their desires. In this way, although I am another separate person, I'm trying to request you. So that was Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on text 12. So Narada is viewing Lord Krishna as being self-sufficient. Before the creation even, he existed, and by his energy, he created all the material elements. And Krishna himself states this in Bhagavad Gita 9:17. He says, Pitaham asya jagato, mata data pitamaha, Vejam pavitram omkara rik sama yayur evacham. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I'm also the Rik, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. Thus, the whole cosmos is manifest, be it of moving or non-moving beings, by different activities of Krishna's energy. And this is what's been acknowledged by Narada. In fact, if we were to generalize, one could say that material activities are caused by the Mahatattva, or the principles of material creation being agitated by the will of the Supreme Lord. So this is not so difficult to understand from the point of view, except for the scale, which is difficult to comprehend. But it's in the same way one's own body has certain energy. So if I will to go to the train station to get home, then I will mobilize my body by my will to walk over to the train station and catch the train and make my way home. So in the same way, Krishna's will, by his will, he's utilizing his energy in order to manifest this cosmos. And this cosmos, of course, is made up of moving and non-moving beings. So, first there's the mode of passion, which is generated by material activities, and this becomes prominent. And material nature is called the mother. And the initiator for materialistic life is the father, which is actually Lord Shiva. He's the father of material activities. So this explanation is given in the second canto, the 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So of course here we're hearing that Krishna is calling himself the father of the universe, the mother, the support and the grandsire. And so one could ask, oh, well, is there some sort of discrepancy here? But actually, Krishna's put into motion the Mahatattva, and so material nature goes into action, and then there's an overseer of the different modes. So, of course, Lord Vishnu is the overseer of the mode of goodness, Lord Shiva the mode of ignorance, and Lord Brahma the mode of passion. So, in that sense, because materialistic life tends to start in passion and then often slide into ignorance, the overseer of the predominant mode of ignorance which is part of materialistic life, is Lord Shiva. Hence, he's called the father of materialistic life, or material life, or the father of material activities. So, of course, we know all those material activities that go on in this world. Like right now in Chicago, wherever you turn, there's road work going on, like old water pipes are being replaced, at least in the city I'm in, up the road in Evanston. So one sees huge cranes pulling up sections of water pipe, pulling up sections of metal that are covering those pipes, and then putting sand back in, and finally tar is going to be put on top of that. So that's part of material activities that go on, maintaining in that case, in some cases, there's new construction going on around. So these are activities, materialistic activities, and or material activities, let's put it that way. Now, Srila Prabhupada gives an example which illustrates Narada's point that Krishna made manifest the primal modes of nature, or modes of nature can be seen as a way of being. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example, and he said if you look at relationships that get created with different living entities under the creation of Lord Krishna's material nature, Prakriti, there's distinctions that one makes in relationships. So then somebody may appear to be one's father, somebody may appear to be one's mother, one's grandmother, etc. But in actual fact, each and every one of those living entities is a part and parcel of Krishna. So, in actual fact, one can view those different living entities in relation to Krishna. So not only is Krishna setting that mass, the Mahatattva, into motion through his form as Lord Vishnu, and having overseers of the different modes of material nature once he gets them going. But as he himself says, he's also the father and the mother and the grandsire of all living entities in this material world. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is pointing to the fact that oneself also makes those distinctions at times, seeing somebody as father, mother, grandfather, etc. But the proper way to view it is to go back to the source and see those entities in relation to Krishna, since he's the father, mother, grandsire of the entire creation. And Krishna puts it this way: I'm situated as the mother, the father, and the grandfather of each moving and non-moving thing in the universe. I, in the form of kings and others, am situated as the maintainer and nourisher of all those entities. So it's interesting that Narada, when talking to King Prachinibari, so this is going back in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 4th canto and in 29th chapter, he says this. So this is very interesting. So this is moving to going from how Srila Prabhupada's indicating one's view of the world and the cosmos needs to be. Here's Narada commenting in his conversation with King Prachinibari how one needs to see the cosmos. So here he is. Krishna consciousness means constantly associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a mental state that the devotee can observe the cosmic manifestation exactly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. Such observation is not always possible, but it becomes manifest exactly like the dark planet known as Rahu, which is observed in the presence of the full moon. So this is how Narada is explaining that one needs to see the cosmos in exactly the same way as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. And he's acknowledging that it's not so straightforward, and he makes the analogy that it's in the same way that you can get to see the planet Rahu. So the planet Rahu is actually invisible. It's very dark. But when the moon is full, then one can see the presence of that particular planet. So this is Krishna consciousness. One's allowing the Bhagavatam, or the view that Narada is expressing, to help one to be able to shed light on how one should see the cosmos. And one may wonder why Narada is going into this kind of detail, what he's leading up to. And in these 3 verses, we're not going to get what he's leading up to yet, but it's the way he's actually putting Krishna into perspective, so that he is indicating to Krishna that he understands the glory of Krishna. So all of this discussion is putting the personality that he's going to address with his request in perspective. So, because obviously if one's addressing a very great personality, one can't address the personality very casually, like immediately come out with, please give me this or please do that. That's not the proper etiquette. The proper etiquette is to indicate to the person that you understand something of them, their capacities, their abilities, their position in the universe or on the earth, and finally come to a point where one can justify why it is that one's putting forward a request to that personality. So this is what Narada is doing. So Narada also says, this is quoting him from text 12, "You are the shelter of all souls, and being the supreme controller, you fulfill your desires simply by your will." So in effect, Krishna is situated in the form of the universe as Paramatma. So we heard, he's actually somehow, he's manifesting all these living beings, moving, unmoving, and now it's going a step further. He's situated in the form of the universe also as Paramatma. That means he is within matter and within all jivas, meaning all spirit souls. Indeed, the definition of supersoul, as Srila Prabhupada has used the phrase or the term to refer to this form of Krishna present in the universe as Paramatma, he uses the term supersoul. And this is the definition of supersoul. Supersoul is the supreme personality of Godhead seated beside the individual soul. He's the witness of the individual soul's activities and is the source of the soul's various types of consciousness. So extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. This is in Srila Prabhupada's definition of supersoul, comes in Bhagavad Gita in the 8th chapter in the 4th verse, in the purport. Now the supersoul is also called Adi Yagya, and that ties in with the previous verse that I'd read, where Krishna says, "I'm the object of knowledge, the purifier and the syllable Om. I'm also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajurvedas." So I'll come to that in a little while. In fact, Krishna gives an explanation of how he's present in the form of the cosmic manifestation as the 3 Vedas. So the Atharva Veda is generally referring to the Vedic verses. The Rig is all those verses that have regular syllables, or it means those verses with a regular meter. which are sung. And Yajur is those verses that aren't sung and have irregular syllables. So Krishna's covering all the Vedic verses, that he's present in them. So he's the three types of mantras useful in worship. So he's present within those mantras, that's what he's saying. So on a very, very subtle level, but literally present. And the super soul, so going to the subtle level in which he's present within, alongside the individual soul in all living beings. As a super soul, he gives the individual soul an opportunity to act freely, and he's witnessing those activities. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary of Narada's thoughts that he's expressing to Lord Krishna is this. He says, as you create the world, you also inspire everyone to fulfill their desires. So that's that same thought of Krishna giving freedom to every living entity while he's witnessing their activities. On a subtle level, for the person practicing Krishna consciousness, his desires on the mental plane, they start to become visible, one after another. So as one's making one's way through Krishna consciousness, or proceeding in cultivating Krishna consciousness, meaning viewing the whole world in the same way that Krishna views the world, these desires that one has start to become apparent on the mental plane. And the reason for this is that, and I thought this was very interesting, sensual desires are recorded in the mind, but they're recorded in a chronological order. From when one's taking birth onwards, it's chronological, the sensual desires that one has. And then they manifest one after another. This is a nice explanation given by Srila Prabhupada in the 4th canto in the 29th chapter. So by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this whole stockpile of desires that one is accumulating through one's life, they could in fact be made visible all in one shot, like all in one at one time. And this has implication because later on we're going to see that Narada will function not with desires on a mental plane, but his understanding of the way Krishna's pastimes are going to evolve, and he does it in chronological order. So we're going to come to that later on. Now, Srila Prabhupada explains that when a person is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, this whole stockpile of material desires becomes minimized. And this is this way because the mind is engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna. So it means that the preoccupation with the desires and all the subsequent desires connected to the initial desire, it doesn't grow because the mind is being directed to meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So you're minimizing the whole stockpile of material desires. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he verbalizes Narada's thoughts in this regard. So connected to this whole idea of what Krishna's role is in everything. As you create this world, you also inspire everyone to fulfill their desires. In this way, although I am another separate person, I am trying to make a request of you. So the extreme intelligence of Narada Muni, he's going to come to a point where he's going to express a desire of his own to Krishna. Of course, it's a spiritual desire, because it's very much in relation to Lord Krishna. But he's carefully working through the whole relationship that Lord Krishna has with the individual soul, the space Lord Krishna gives for the individual soul to perform their activities, have their desires, have those desires be manifested chronologically as one's trying to understand Krishna or see the world through Krishna's eyes. And he's understanding, again, through this whole explanation, I'm a separate person, so I'm one of those living beings that got created. And in fact, you also are inspiring persons to fulfill their desires. Krishna's allowing for that. So Narada is preparing the ground for when he's going to come to express his particular desire. And Narada goes on in the 13th verse that we read today, leading up to his request by saying that this very same creator, meaning Krishna, and this is his words, having descended on the earth to annihilate the Daitya, Pramata, and Rakshasa demons who are posing as kings and also to protect the godly, is now standing right there. So he's expanding what Krishna is accomplishing by his will, and also his particular purpose at that moment in time when he descended to the earth, in which direction his will was moving. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur paraphrases. So again, this verse doesn't have commentary, the BBT commentary, but it has a commentary from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So I'm going to read his commentary. You are the creator. This is as though Narada is talking, because Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur always goes into the heart of the person and understands the thinking. And he puts Narada's words this way: you are the creator mentioned in the previous verse, and you have appeared to protect the devotees and destroy the demons posing as kings. So put very simply. So in effect, Narada is saying that Krishna appeared himself on the surface of this earth just to kill all the so-called kings who are actually demons. And Narada's words are, you have advented yourself to fulfill your own statement that you come within this material world just to protect the principles of religion and to annihilate unwanted miscreants. And indeed, once again, Narada has seen the world the way Krishna has seen it. So here is this exact same statement on the part of Krishna. Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharatam abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujami aham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, a descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise in irreligion, at that time I descend myself. That's Bhagavad Gita 4.7, Krishna talking. So you can see that in effect, the Vedic principles which are pushing towards complete surrender to Lord Krishna, when they get disturbed by demoniac persons, that's when the Lord appears. And indeed, there's a comprehensive listing, which is quite interesting. You know, one doesn't think that there would be such a list, but here it is. There's actually a list of rebellious souls, like the demons and the demoniac men that are being referred to as those that are disturbing this push towards surrender to Lord Krishna. And this list is given in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 2nd canto in the 7th chapter. So it's a little comprehensive, but I'm going to read it. So this is the list. It's like, sometimes you read of or maybe even in the past, there were pictures of criminals and there'd be a photograph of them and then their name and, they're the wanted list. So this is something like that. Because these are all the rebellious souls, the demons and demoniac personalities. Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arista, Chanura, Mustika, Kuvalyapida, Elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura, Pundraka, great marshals like Salva, Davida, Monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the 7 bulls, Sambara, Vidurata, and Rukmi. And also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kekaya. So this is that list, and it said of them that they would all fight vigorously, either with Lord Hari directly, or with him under the name of Baladev, Arjun, Bhishma, etc. And that these demons, once they're killed, they would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti of Krishna's personal abode or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. So Narada describes, after this whole presentation where he's putting Krishna in perspective, Narada then in the 14th verse, the last one of today, Narada says in summary, because he's now going to describe one of these fights with Lord Hari. So he describes the dealing of the Lord with Keshi, which we've just heard, who's one of those rebellious souls who are disturbing the surrender to the Supreme Lord. So Narada says in summary, the horse demon was so terrifying that his neighing frightened the demigods into leaving their heavenly kingdom. But by our good fortune, you have enjoyed the sport of killing him. So that was text 14. Now there's a description in Krishna book, which I thought was a nice summary, because Narada is saying something in summary. So I'm going to read this interesting fight with Lord Hari from Krishna book as Srila Prabhupada has narrated it. Krishna saw that the demon was terrifying all the residents of Vrindavan with his whinnying and his tail wheeling in the sky like a big cloud. Krishna could understand that the horse was challenging him to fight. The Lord accepted his challenge and stood before the Keshi demon. The horse demon then ran towards Krishna, making a horrible sound like a roaring lion. His jaws spread wide open as if to swallow the whole sky. Keshi rushed towards the Lord with great speed and tried to trample him with his legs, which were strong, forceful, and as hard as stone. Krishna, however, immediately caught hold of his legs and thus baffled him. Krishna was somewhat angry, and thus he began to whirl the horse around. After a few rounds, he contemptuously threw him 100 yards away, just as Garuda throws a big snake. Thrown by Krishna, the horse immediately passed out, but after a little while, he regained consciousness and with great anger and force rushed towards Krishna with his mouth open. As soon as Keshi reached him, Krishna pushed his left arm within the horse's mouth until it looked as though a big snake had entered a hole in the field. The horse felt great pain because Krishna's arm felt to him like a hot iron rod. Immediately his teeth fell out. Krishna's arm within the mouth of the horse at once began to expand, and Keshi's throat choked up. As the great horse suffocated, perspiration appeared on his body. He threw his legs hither and thither. As his last breath came, his eyeballs bulged in their socket, and he passed stool and urine simultaneously. Then the vital force of his life expired. So I've read Srila Prabhupada's description of this fight with Lord Hari. of one of these rebellious souls, one of the hit list, so to speak, in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Vishwanath comments that Narada said, so this is his commentary on this 14th verse, and it's just one line. You have destroyed this demon for the benefit, Distya, of the people. And that's again in line with what Krishna himself said his purpose for coming is. He actually wants to annihilate miscreants, as he put it. So the fact that Lord Krishna put into practice this killing of a demon is praised by Srila Krsnarcana Goswami, which is only appropriate since Narada, even by his acknowledging and putting into perspective Lord Krishna, it leads to the next part, which is praise of Lord Krishna. So here's Srila Sanatana Goswami's praise of Lord Krishna. You easily killed that great demon, O destroyer of Keshi. Victory to you, O Keshava, O crusher of Keshi. I offer my respects to you, whom the demigods worshipped. So this is from Krishna Leela Stava. Thus having annihilated an unwanted demoniac entity. So these were some thoughts on where we've come to in this little section of the Bhagavatam. If there's anything to add to the discussion.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice reading and explaining. And I was wondering, in verse number 13, so is it Narada committed some offense? So what is that offense he committed so that he is begging forgiveness? I have committed offense by having your devotees who should be protected, tired of. That means, what type of offense that Narada did to Krishna? Is it Narada?
I see you asking your question in relation to text 13, and text 13 reads, you, that very same creator, have now descended on the earth to annihilate the Daitya, Pramata and Rakshasa demons who are posing as kings, and also to protect the godly. So I'm not quite seeing where you're seeing Narada thinking that he's committed an offense.
Commentaries that, who is that asking forgiveness? Is it Narada? This is the last one.
So the commentary on text 13, you understanding that there's some request for forgiveness?
Yeah, towards the last by Sanatana Goswami.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is paraphrasing Narada talking, and his paraphrase is of the same text that we've just read, text 13. You are the creator mentioned in the previous verse, and you have appeared to protect the devotees and destroy the demons posing as kings. So that was the commentary.
No, Mataji, go to last paragraph. Sanatana Goswami's commentaries.
Oh, the very last verse?
The last...
my last comment that I made about Srila Sanatana Goswami. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want me to read that?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So this is from Krishna Leela Stapa, and Srila Sanatana Goswami is paying obeisance after obeisance after obeisance to Lord Krishna, and he's remembering all of Krishna's pastimes. So he, in relation to this pastime of Lord Krishna killing the Keshi demon, Srila Sanatana Goswami says these words, and then he offers his obeisances. And the words he says are, and he he's addressing Lord Krishna because it's just prior to his offering and obeisance. You easily killed that great demon, O destroyer of Keshi, victory to you, O Keshava, O crusher of Keshi. I offer my respects to you, whom the demigods worshipped. So he's commenting because Krishna has annihilated an unwanted demoniac entity, meaning Keshi. So this is very simple. He's just acknowledging, but he's praising Krishna. Srila Sanatana Goswami is praising Lord Krishna. So the whole book that's there is a compilation of his praises of Lord Krishna in relation to each pastime, and in like 2 sentences he summarizes an entire pastime prior to offering an obeisance. And I don't know what the whole book, how many obeisances it is, but it's one after the other, in the same way that you might see people in Vrindavan, circumambulating Govardhan Hill, doing one obeisance after another, putting their stone where they're to mark the spot where they've just paid an obeisance, and then paying the next obeisance, starting from where the spot is that they've marked where they paid the previous obeisance. So Srila Sanatana Goswami does it verbally and acknowledges Krishna's greatness in each of these pastimes, and particularly in this one that I've read, it's where he's acknowledging the extraordinary feat performed by Lord Krishna to kill the Keshi demon, since this is part of what Narada is referring to. So I read that particular.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So ultimately Krishna is the controller, and the modes of nature is created by him, and the living entity desires. That was the translation, right? So if a living entity wants to desire to be Krishna consciousness, it's not ultimately his sanction. Ultimately it's finally by Krishna. Or because of the desire, he cannot be Krishna conscious.
So your question is, becoming Krishna conscious, is it a question of Krishna's sanction, or is it the desire of the living entity? That's the question?
Yeah, the living entity desires to be Krishna consciousness, but ultimately it is by Krishna's sanction only he can be Krishna conscious. But the living entity also desires something else and Krishna conscious, so there's a block. So ultimately, finally, it's Krishna only will.
Ultimately?
It's Krishna's sanction, he can be Krishna conscious.
Oh, okay. The question is, a living entity's desire may be to become Krishna conscious, but naturally there's other things apart from Krishna consciousness that the living entity desires. So is it that there's Krishna's sanction for those other desires and the Krishna consciousness? Is that the question?
To say living entity desires to be Krishna consciousness, but ultimately Krishna is the controller, right? If he wills to be Krishna consciousness, but still it should be the sanction of Krishna, correct? So one is that, and second is the living entity desires something else, so it blocks his Krishna consciousness. So
yes, that's a very honest assessment of the position of any living entity who has actually understood that Krishna's whole creation is designed in a way that it can propel him to move in the direction of surrendering to Lord Krishna. So a living entity who has actually willed to start the surrendering process is then finding that naturally there's all kinds of material desires, and from what Srila Prabhupada says, there's actually a whole chronological list of material desires in the mind. So there's no denying it. It's chronologically recorded, those material desires. So there's the sanction of Krishna which comes into the question, which is the interesting question you're bringing up, or this problem that appears to be there. How is Krishna, since everything's sanctioned by Krishna, then does it mean those material desires are also sanctioned by him and the Krishna consciousness? So he's actually giving the space for living entities to have their material desires. And what one is doing as a person who's operating under the understanding that one wants to cultivate a consciousness of Krishna and a consciousness that's moving in the direction of seeing the world through his eyes, one starts to see the world through scriptures, which is none different from Krishna, and gives the means for dealing with those material desires. So the means for dealing with the material desires is that one is going to the scriptures to understand how to fulfill material desires in a religious manner. So hence there may be desires that have to do with the acquisition of a wife, a husband, the acquisition of property, the acquisition of material comforts, the acquisition of offspring, the acquisition of a means of maintenance. These, you could say, are material desires because they have to do with maintenance of the body, and they're part of activities one performs in the material world. So you could say they're material desires, but then when you reference the scriptures, then one knows that one can fulfill each of those desires in a religious manner, such that one performs the proper ceremony that acknowledges that this is a step one is taking in one's life. So one, if one's going to get married, one does the proper ceremony. There's the public acknowledgement of one's commitment to actually stay with that relationship. Then if it's going to be the having children, the proper sacrifices done of, the relevant number of rounds that should be chanted to attract a very qualified entity, and so on. So that's one part of it. And then the other part is the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, one's way of viewing each of those steps that one takes, doing it in a religious manner, is also done with Krishna being the focus of the particular sacrifice, or Krishna being the focus of the particular step that one's taking. So one is seeing oneself as performing a service to Krishna with every one of those steps. So one is seeing oneself as serving Krishna by performing that particular fulfillment of some material desire. So it's a shift in perspective. It's part of that process of surrender. Oh, I am fulfilling this material desire, but it's done to serve Lord Krishna. I'm going to serve Lord Krishna through taking this particular step, or serve him, or serve the entities that are now expanding my material world. I'll be serving them in the best way possible because I want to do this as an offering to Lord Krishna. So that's how I understand it. I don't know if you have some thoughts because you're thinking about this topic. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.